This week, we welcome Tom Arnold, Adjunct Professor, Digital Evidence and Forensics, Cybersecurity Graduate Program at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, to discuss CISO lessons from a children's novel. In the Leadership and Communications segment, executives say cybersecurity has outgrown the IT department. You don't say. The most dangerous leadership mistakes isn't a wrong answer, it's a wrong question. Building cyber talent through competition, residency, and real-world immersion, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
Right now, with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT. Making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. Modern attacks don't just hit devices, they target your users to gain access to Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And when those platforms go down, it's not just email, it's your entire business. That's why there's Kaseya 365 User, one unified platform that protects your users and SaaS applications. Phishing, credential leaks, insider risks, it stops them all. Learn more and schedule a demo at securityweekly.com/K365. This podcast is supported by AutoRabbit. You trust Salesforce to power your business, but even the best systems have blind spots. Hidden risks like over-permissioned users, untested code, and missing backups can quietly slip through the cracks. AutoRabbit closes those gaps. Their DevSecOps platform brings automation, governance, and security together so you can build fast and stay protected. Because speed means nothing if you can't trust what you deliver. Visit securityweekly.com/AutoRabbit to learn more. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 429, recorded January 5th, 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope it was better than mine. I had two teams lose within 20 hours in the CFPs. Not a good days for me. But joining me for this interview segment are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Ben Carr. Happy New Year, Ben.
Happy New Year, Matt. Great to be here with you. It's hopefully going to be a great New Year, and I'll be in my house hopefully very soon. So we were just talking about cameras and networks, and so yeah, excited things moving forward.
Just so you know, Ben, when you're done, you're not done. Because
I know. Trust me.
Electricians here rewiring stuff because my wife keeps adding stuff. So it's going to happen. Also joining me, because my other two co-hosts are out, is Adrian Sanabria. Adrian, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Matt. Good to see you guys. Always enjoy being on this one. And though I'm in a 70-year-old house, it also never ends. I'm trying to figure out how to run Cat 6 so I can install some of these cameras and stuff like that. And there's always challenges.
Yes, challenges with the outdoor heaters today, in my case. Anyways, one quick announcement, and then we'll get into this. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conference will take place March 23rd to the 26th in San Francisco. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5 SecWeekly. Hope to see you there. I'll be there. I'm already registered. I already got my hotel. It's I can't remember how many this is, Adrian, for me, but it's a lot.
Yeah, this is probably going to be my 12th at this point. I didn't start going until I was an industry analyst, though. So I'd been in the industry for already a decade and a half before I ever went to one. But it was I'm looking forward to RSA. I'm speaking at this one. I'm actually giving a talk with Adam Shostack.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I didn't submit this year. I've submitted in the past. I've I've keynoted Singapore twice and Abu Dhabi twice, and did the U.S. once. Anyways, it's hard to get. They get so many submissions. It's hard to get selected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just run around as a media guy for the week and call it a day. All right, to our guest, Tom Arnold teaches in the Cybersecurity Graduate Program at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. In his most recent role, he headed up the forensics and audit team, specializing in internal and external security assessments related to U.S. and international standards. In early 2025, Tom's novel, The Digital Detective: First Intervention, was released, portraying how a 14-year-old and his friend use forensics to foil an international terror plot. Tom has provided consulting to the U.S. Secret Service, gives policy guidance to the U.S. government and regulatory agencies, is on the steering committee for the Las Vegas branch of the USSS Cyber Fraud Task Force. Tom, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you and all your viewers.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about, the way I phrased this, Tom, after we talked, is I'm like, wait, let's talk about the book first. Like, why the book? What was the inspiration for the book? Because I think it comes partially from a true story. And then I want to apply that story and the book to some lessons we should take away from that. Because if I think about this, right, we've got younger employees at our jobs every day. We have
That's right.
older employees that may be susceptible to some of these same issues. And so what are some of the lessons CISOs could take out from this book? So let's start with the background for the book first, and why'd you write it?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, as you know, I've been teaching at UNLV, and prior to that at Cal State University, and close to 20 years in cyber forensics, if you want to call it that. I don't like that name, but that's just me. And, you know, in the classes, all the classes, especially the undergraduate classes, I would do a section on cyber safety and cyber hygiene, as I call it, talking to the students with regards to how things can be taken, and basically trying to really educate them that on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, is the reality of the whole thing. That's the basic foundation. And in the classes, even in the auditorium, when I had 95 students in the room, I think over 2/3 of them were asleep. And I was talking to the cinder blocks in the walls. Well, a couple of years ago, my daughter and her husband, he's in cybersecurity for he's a director in one of the large corporations out of Washington State. And, you know, they're very savvy as parents with regards to cybersecurity. And my middle grandson was playing Roblox. And a character, or an avatar, approached him, even though all the parental safety guards, all of that good stuff was set. The character approached him and held up a sign that said, "What's your name and where do you live?" is what the sign said. Okay. Now, the reality is he ran to mom at that point and said, "Look, what's happening here? What do I do?" Okay. And so they handled it together. But I started realizing, wait a minute, a lot of parents, a lot of kids, and even the undergrads that I was teaching in Cal State, I was sitting there going, hold on a second. They probably would have answered this question and engaged in a dialogue. But the reality is, you know, it's tradecraft. Just get someone used to giving you anything. That's the beginning of tradecraft. Okay?
Right.
And this was really a scare. And I said, there's got to be a better way to communicate with the kids. So the stories came up, and the second book's getting ready to come out as well. And I took on basically cybersecurity topics where the detective is a 14-year-old, and basically allowed them to see what the attacks were, how the attacks manifested, how bad they could be, and how the 14-year-old, you know, used his rather rudimentary cybersecurity skills, if you would. And I hate to say that because everybody on this call will shoot me. Okay, but the reality is he used his skills basically to work through and begin to solve what was going on. And so now the second book coming out deals with sextortion and human trafficking, which are two very dark topics, but I'm going to take them at a level where a 10-year-old can read this book because that's who the audience is. basically. So it's The Digital Detective, First Intervention is the book that's out now.
So talk me through, like, as a 14-year-old, what kind of investigation did he do, right? Like, what are some of the basics, right? Because as I think about this, right, there's applicability in a couple different places. There's obviously applicability on the front end of this, which is your grandson, somebody asked him for, hey, what's your name? Where do you live? Which is, a nice social engineering attack, which a lot of people get susceptible to in different ways, right? Maybe it's not your actual physical address, might be your email address, it might be different ways to get the information, right? So obviously there's some pieces on the front end, but then as you realize that something's going on, kind of what's that process look like? How did he deduce that in the book, and what can we learn from some of those deductions that kind of played out?
The story plays out a few different ways, and one of the key factors that I used in the story was the fact that right now the average age of a kid getting a cell phone, I'm calling it a cell phone, a smartphone, let's be honest,
a mini computer,
okay, is 11 years old.
Yeah.
And, a parent in Texas, when I was, at a social gathering, made a comment to me that she felt more comfortable talking to her kids about sex than she did about cybersecurity and cyber safety. She was terrified that they knew more than she did. They were more savvy than she was. And another parent at a separate gathering makes the statement to me that says, we took an isolation strategy here, no phones, no laptops, no computer, blah, 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 totally isolate the kid. And my neighbor comes over and shows me that my son has a Facebook page.
Yep.
Okay.
Nope.
And it's really, there's a real similarity between those two topics with regards to the education and with regards to how actual technically savvy these young children actually are as they begin to get into things. Now, do they have the skills to reason that something's wrong or what's right, what's wrong? Do they have the skills to really reason as to what might be a threat? Oops, I just hit the microphone. What might be a threat and what might be okay, if you would. It's several pieces to that. And, since the book came out, and I hate this story very much, but it led to the second book. And that is basically that a teen was told she couldn't go to the beach with her friends, older teen, if you would, and she had to stay home. So she went to her room, put on her bikini, got in the bed, started taking pictures of herself and sending them to her friends and say, I'm really there with you. 2 weeks later, the pictures came back, but there was no bikini.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the beginning of a sextortion.
Yep.
Okay, she ran to mom. Again, mom exploded, big mushroom cloud in the kitchen, sort of thing. But the reality is the mom cooled down, they handled it together and moved forward. So those are the type of stories that keep hitting me every time I have a discussion on the topic. And I go, we really have to start at least introducing them. So the book really does introduce them to several pieces of technology in here. And yes, the 14-year-old kid is pretty savvy as to what he's dealing with. His dad is a police detective. So he understands about detection and investigations and has some knowledge there. And to the extent that the dad, because of cost-cutting measures, and this is actually true, but the forensics labs no longer are allowed to do the analysis of the data. They can only process the data and prepare it. The individual detectives, and think about that for a minute, okay, have to do all the analysis work. And this detective went, wow, I'm sort of out of my depth. So I kept using my son to help me do things to figure out, what does this actually mean? What should I do next?
Right.
Sort of thing.
There's a lot of
that. They cut the budgets to such a degree in the law enforcement agency. Sad but true. Okay. And so that was sort of the introduction as to the background of the character in the beginning. and moving forward to answer that. He does a variety of things. He does network analysis. He looks at PCAPs. He does, analysis of computer systems using a variety of tools. All the tools are real. All the techniques are real that are in the book. If you try them out, they'll actually work. So is the reality. And he uses nothing but open source to do his work.
That's a great segue into people who want to understand the skill set needed to come into cybersecurity. Read the book, and then you'll get some of the hints on some of the tools you need to actually go look
not
at.
Quite.
Some of them, a few of them. Exactly. Now, so let's tie this to the CISO a little bit, because, all right, so I have highly savvy employees with mini computers in their hands. Right?
In their hands, in their pockets.
In their pockets. They walk around with, they have access to critical systems and applications and data. What are some of the takeaways we can think about, and how this applies to the employee workforce?
Well, for the workforce, especially the younger workforce, is far more savvy. And organizations largely have surrendered to bring your own device, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone or just you name it, Android, whatever, okay? And a lot of organizations, now I'm in a university, so the university is mine is actually fairly strict to this. Cal State was like, open, do whatever you want. You want to put your phone on my network, no problem, sort of shot. You want to run your class out of your phone? Okay, no problem. Mine's a little more strict, but they still don't have profiles or anything like that to try to control the devices or control the information itself. So there's all these alternate channels. I'm reminded of a story of a case that I got involved with, which was actually in Australia, out of Sydney, okay? And what happened is one of the national police officers went in and, as I was told, he went into this company and said, I need to talk to the chief information security officer. I have TLP red information for him, and I need to speak with him, is what he told the receptionist. Receptionist went and got the CISO. The two of them go off into the room. What did she do at that point? She posted on Twitter that the national police were in and that we may have been hacked. Yay! Go
What?
CISOs. Okay. How do you deal with this? Okay. Now all of a sudden you got a little bit of a PR nightmare that's starting to happen. And if you're a big company like this one was, that happened to be in banking, suddenly there's news trucks outside, is really what happened inside there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that sort of leakage, and a lot of people I don't think visualize that that's actually a leak. That's actually not good, And, you sort of have to think about the receptionist, and what actually began to happen there, and the snowball that then took effect at that point in time. And of course, as we know in the industry, when you do have a compromise, when you do have an event take place, you really don't want to tip off the bad guy that you actually know.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I thought it was, there was a period where I recall CISOs telling me they're having trouble because in their previous jobs, they had gone through a breach. And, getting those next gigs, that was something that kind of followed them around. I think these days, so many CISOs have been through breaches. I wouldn't expect to see that as much, but it just struck me as bizarre because even though I was a chief incident handler, for a large portion of my career, I never worked an external hacking incident. I never worked a breach. And I think I would be a terrible choice if you're bringing me into an organization that has had many breaches, right? So it's without that experience, it's easy to make a lot of those mistakes. That you're describing, and it's anybody can have a breach, but I think as we've seen over and over again as these things happen, it's how you handle it that really.
Yeah, Adrian, I think that that's definitely changed. Like, I've talked to a number of roles, right, where that's actually come up is like, how would you handle a breach? What breaches have you handled? And while you can't really talk about, the specific details, they want to see the level of experience that you've had that you've run through kind of the machinations of what that looks like, that you have the calmness, that you've learned, what have you learned out of it? How would you approach it differently? And so I definitely think that that's something that, in the CISO role, people are really looking for is like, what experience do you have actually in the seat doing this function where, it might come up, it might be around, it's actually probably likely to come up at some point, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful segue into the question of how cybercrime has evolved, if I may.
Yeah.
Sure.
And, over the last 10 years, we're talking about computer hacking here and attacks that cause some sort of perimeter effect and coming into the organization or already in the organization and doing something. And hacking is all about, theft and terror and fraud and espionage. The next one I would say that's actually fairly big for organizations that don't quite get it is the question of piracy and intellectual property.
Yeah.
And we think of piracy and we think of, oh yeah, that's way back into stealing music or stealing videos and, those sort. No, it's really actually quite insane, if you would. One case that's, comes to mind was a company that made medical devices here in the United States. And they were attacked by a Chinese organization, basically, who gained a foothold. And the Chinese organization stole all the data related to a product that was end of life for almost 5 years. And they took absolutely everything from test results to absolutely everything at that point in time. The argument we got into with legal and everyone else is they wanted to declare that they didn't actually have a breach because it was an end-of-life project and they didn't care about the intellectual property anymore. And I was stunned myself. I said, and how many people are in China that might need this sort of thing and maybe China doesn't have it, and how much money are they making off of you? Sort of shot. And they just wanted deaf ears. We haven't had a problem. Is really what it was.
I can't tell you how often I spend a lot of my time investigating, not investigating the breaches directly, but seeing what lessons we can pull from them, and going through the post-mortem reports and things like that. And I can't tell you, like, at least a dozen times in the last year, we had cases where companies said, oh yeah, the data that the attackers accessed wasn't important. And that's the headline that everybody sees when they first announced the breach.
Yep.
Then 2 weeks later, 6 weeks later, maybe 3 to 6 months later, they're like, actually, we now know that they got into everything.
Yeah.
Unrealized result.
Yeah, that one doesn't
right.
spread nearly as much.
So we focus a lot on malware and automated attacks, which are actually quite different as to how they behave. Who would have thought the first ransomwares that came out, which were, fairly basic compared to today, would evolve into the level of extortion that they've evolved to today.
Yeah.
They're absolutely massive in nature. The next one that a lot of CISOs rightly sort of shove aside is pornography and image-based abuse. Which is actually a fairly large topic. I gave you the little example of the girl on the bed with, having the bikini removed and all that sort of stuff. But image-based abuse within a corporation and within a corporate environment is actually fairly pervasive, I would say. Okay, child sexual exploitation, there's nothing worse than my forensics team, and from direct experience, going in and investigating something and suddenly coming across somebody's machine that contains CSEM.
Yeah, completely changes the
Everything's
investigation.
changed
Yeah,
at that point. The CISOs are largely completely unprepared, unequipped, and not ready for something of that magnitude, in realizing that the law says I have absolutely I can't not see it, is my point. I have to report.
Yeah, it's a crime not to. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, absolutely. And that goes the same thing for a system administrator who comes across it during routine maintenance, who comes across CSEM inside the organization. They must report that. And suddenly there's certain law enforcement agencies knocking at the door at that point, and search warrants and everything else.
And what's changed here with AI is now there are AI models that can generate it from scratch.
That's right. And it can be used for blackmail. It can be used for extortion. It can be used for all kinds of things against employees of the company to get them to do your will.
Employees, executives, all kinds of,
across the board.
Yeah.
Across the, you can't.
A lot of potential liability.
Yeah, just the emotional side of things. Your reputation is everything. You can't not deal with it. You have to have a plan to deal with it. And I doubt there's a single policy out there for how to deal with these things inside organizations if they haven't already had the problem, is the point. The other one that was really interesting to hit was bullying, harassment, and cyber stalking of the employees. Welcome the HR department in a fairly big way. Could be internal to the company, could be external, could be caused by a vendor, could be caused by a customer even, as it goes through. Obviously, extremism and cyber terror, extremism goes, one way. Cyber terror is still up for a lot of debate as to what it actually is and whether it actually exists, if you would. But extremism definitely does. And organizations, you'll see cyber defacements, all kinds of things that begin to happen. Intelligence operations for those quasi-government agencies, government contractors, utility services, they have to be aware of this as well. And these are extremely well-trained organizations that come after them. And then there's illicit market operations, if you would, the selling of the material. This goes right along with the malware automated attacks, if you would. So I would suggest that when you look at the typologies of cybercrime today, you can't look at cybercrime as a whole and say you're defending against cybercrime. Wait a minute. What exactly are you defending against, and how are you defending against it is really the question that starts to pop into mind here.
Yeah, it really
has
has to be targeted.
Actually, I'm sort of against standards like PCI and things like that out there, because they give a real false sense of security.
Yeah, I mentioned before, I never worked an external incident. All my incidents were internal. So embezzlement, espionage, HR stuff. I spent 2 weeks going through 2 employees' emails in a stalking case, in an internal stalking case. We had drug rings inside the company. Again, amazes me what employees will use corporate email to discuss. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Use some other email account to do your illegal stuff. So I was also the guy giving the talks to all the new hires. Every time we had a class of new hires, I go in there and I'd say, we can see where you're browsing. We can see what's in your email. Like we're not actively looking in there all the time, but please don't do anything that makes me have to go in and read all your email.
Yeah, there's a very fine line between right and wrong in a lot of these younger people's minds as to what's actually wrong. Okay, well, I'm just on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, even if it's not wrong, though, right? So early in my career, I worked for a web filtering company, very popular one. And amazing the amount of stuff that you would go in and find. You'd walk into a school and do a demo and be walking somebody out the next day because of what you found, right? Whether it's high school, grade school, college, or, organizations, corporate America. And it's just amazing the things that if it was exposed to the light of day, you wouldn't be comfortable with it, but you're comfortable doing it because it's on a computer. Right?
Yeah.
Well, you also think there's some unalienable right to do it because I'm just on the internet. I'm connected to the internet.
Yeah.
I have a right to do this. Oh, do you?
I had to fire an employee because, and this is within the 90-day period of hiring him, well within it. I think it was less than 30 days. We had found that he signed up for female body part email a day on his corporate and it was an image that he would get once a day on
Once
his
a
corporate
day.
email. And there's this like lack of, and you kind of talked about it before, like the CISO who posted on Twitter that they just had a breach. Like there's this lack of logistical awareness, or I don't want to call it common sense, because clearly it's not common sense to a lot of people. A lot of people don't know where those boundaries are, what can be seen, what incognito mode actually means versus.
And you take a smartphone, and I would do this with the students, especially the undergrads, and we would do things on the smartphone, and then I would show the unified logs as to the fact that everything's remembered. Mm-hmm. Now, everything you do on this thing is remembered. You walk across the room, it's remembered.
Yeah.
Okay? Guys, do stupid
Target
things.
knows what aisle you're standing in because of that thing in your pocket.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct. And, somehow they think it's magic that it remembers, oh, there's the last 5 files that I opened. It's just magic. And I go, yeah, it's just magic.
It's AI now, Tom. It's AI now.
Well, that too.
AI, it is magic, right?
It's magic.
That is
That's
the new
right.
magic.
Yeah.
That's right. And the fact that it reported it to Apple and Google and everybody else, okay, that's magic too.
Tom, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
I really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation with you all.
Thank you very much. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices join in your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your business. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. All right, now let's get into this week's articles. Got a couple crossovers here. I always try to do a couple crossovers. So this first article, executives say cybersecurity has outgrown the IT department. Look, none of us disagree with that. But when I got into the rest of this article, I'm like...
Shocking, Matt.
Really?
That's shocking. No.
Yeah, shocking. Outsourcing becomes a security strategy. Is that true? Like, the only way I'm going to solve security, which is a strategic initiative grown bigger than IT, is I'm going to outsource it?
Solve?
I think that's the perception of a strategy with a lot of executives that aren't in IT or security, maybe even in IT to some extent. But yeah, it's not. I've seen it happen before where they think that that's going to work and it doesn't. It fails miserably.
Yeah, I mean, you might even think you're shifting liability, but I mean, it almost seems more likely.
I've always said you can outsource the work, but you can't outsource the risk. The risk
Exactly.
remains with you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And not only that, you now have very little control
Yeah.
over managing that risk. It becomes binary. Either your third party gets hacked or they don't.
Right.
And
Or
how do you-
your third party get hacked or don't.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the other thing, right? This goes right back into the third party risk management stuff. I'm going to outsource my security services to an MSSP. That MSSP is leveraging other technologies, other providers. Now you've got this whole TPRM issue, like in your core day-to-day security operations stuff. And look, I get it for small to medium businesses. Maybe that's the only way they can approach some of this stuff, but I don't think this is a broad strategy that's going to work, because you lose that control and you still have all these third, fourth, nth party risk scenarios in play.
Well, I think if you look at MSSPs and you think that none of those MSSPs are outsourcing some of that work that they're doing,
Right.
people that if you had looked at them and you had done your own analysis, you would say, I'm never going to outsource to these guys. You're missing that. It's an arm's length transaction that you'll never be able to really manage, right? Now, look, again, to your point, small, mid-sized companies, even large companies, there's some things, yes, you want to outsource, right? Because it makes sense. And there are commodity things you can outsource, right? But you have to understand what the risk is of doing that outsourcing work and either, accept it or deal with it somehow. And so that's the key function that we're supposed to play as CISOs, is looking at the risk and evaluating that. And if the rest of the business says, we're just going to outsource this and make it easy, there's been a lot of communication, a lot of stuff going on the last couple of months about the vCISO community and what you should outsource to vCISOs. And I see a lot of posts of like, vCISOs can handle this. I guess maybe, but you're outsourcing that, right? And what work is that vCISO then? What have they outsourced? They're giving you a policy, but was it tailored for you, or was it a generic policy that they just tweaked a little
Came
bit
out of AI.
and put your name on it, right? If you've ever dealt with anybody in the legal field, you're paying $500 an hour for the same document the guy before you paid $500 an hour for, right? That's the hidden efficiency there. Is like, once you do it once, it's just a lot of profit on the backside. So
$500 an hour is actually cheap.
yes, I know. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying, I've seen $650 and up hourly rates for some of this work, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, I don't know, Adrian, I see you shaking your head. I mean, it's the same. I'm assuming you're of the same opinion here on this.
Well, I'm curious. I have a question for you, Ben, in that I still get the impression that a breach at a third party is better than a breach at a first party. Like are the optics still somewhat better when it's somebody you hired versus you
directly? With a third party versus you? Is that the question?
Yeah. Somebody you hired versus you directly.
Yeah. So I guess I'll look at it this way, right? Like, it depends, right? The devil's in the detail of the nuance there. So if you're taking, let's look at SolarWinds, right? Just because it was a very large incident, probably most people are aware of at some level what happened with the SolarWinds incident. If you were using SolarWinds, is it like inexcusable that you were using SolarWinds and they got breached? No, right?
No.
If you had gotten breached in a first party incident, is that inexcusable? I guess the question would be like, well, why did you get breached, right? Was it you had some negligence or something you didn't do that was due diligence that you should have done? In that case, yes. But if it was like, look, we got breached by a nation state and it was a rough time and we did our best to recover, I think that's where you look at the output of the program, and the recovery is more important than the incident, right? In general.
Yeah.
Now, in a third party,
100%.
I would say the same thing's there, right? Did you do your due diligence? What I would say the problem is there for almost everybody, and Matt, Adrian, I want your opinion on this, is are we ever really doing our due diligence on third parties? Like, I think a lot of it's check the box. A lot of it's like, we'll accept the SOC 2. I've gotten SOC 2s before. Like,
Yeah.
like, is a SOC 2 say you're secure? No, it says you got a SOC 2. So if you're just accepting that they had a SOC 2 and it's fine, which a lot of smaller players are doing, I don't think you're doing your due diligence, and I think you should come out at the same level of culpability that they did. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but that's my feeling on it.
I've made a habit of reading SOC 2s on the day of or very soon after a breach occurs.
Yeah.
And matching that up once we get some details out of that breach. And people are not doing what they say they're doing in their SOC 2s. Is the conclusion.
And it's point in time, right?
So this has been the problem with the SOC 2s in the old SAS 70s before that, right? Is they're self-directed, which means the company can pick and choose which controls they want to implement and go through an audit process and validate those on an annual basis. Look, we produce a SOC 2 during my day job. We use it often as part of the security reviews, and we have to augment when asked, right? But if you're a large vendor, I can guarantee you they're going to push back on providing that. Like, there's certain companies that won't even provide SOC 2s to their clients, and they're like, basically take it or leave it.
Take it or leave
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're big enough.
If they're big enough. So the point, Ben, that you asked is due diligence being done? It depends. Sometimes in smaller vendors, it is being done because you want to make sure that there's no risk there. But in some of these larger vendors, you've got to be willing to walk away from the business. And I'm going to tell you right now, having run these programs in the past, the business doesn't want to change those vendors. The business doesn't necessarily care if they're secure or not.
Yeah.
They want to move forward with that vendor. And so I don't think there is a ton of due diligence being done, at least from a security perspective.
No, and I know a lot of large organizations. So I've worked for large organizations in the past where we've had the right to audit, right? So it's built in the contract that we can actually audit those to see if you're complying. That's not done a lot, right? Like, even though the right exists, it's not done. And so that's on the big orgs. And then if you're a small company, you're dealing with the large, you're dealing with the Microsoft, you're dealing with the Salesforce, you're dealing with the ServiceNow. The anticipation is, they must be doing security well. Outside the show, we were talking about Microsoft and others, right? And yes, I mean, look, they're probably doing better than a 100-person organization can do, but it doesn't mean they don't make failures. They don't have issues. And so I think as an industry, we're not handling this very well. And the assumption is just, you have a piece of paper, it's good enough, even though we all know it's not anywhere close to good enough.
Yeah, and I think part of this, so this is, I mentioned I'm giving a talk at RSA, and this talk is about breach transparency and the fact that we need more details about how these breaches happen. And, it's kind of hard to figure out what to focus on, right? Like where companies falling down, is it a third party, that said MFA was enabled everywhere and hadn't even rolled it out to an entire department? Are these the kinds of issues we're seeing? And
that's pretty
in the majority of
systemic,
stuff I see.
Adrian, don't you think that's pretty systemic? Like, it's not just cyber, right? Like, we don't have a lot of transparency around anything we do. And the one concrete thing everybody's probably dealt with in your life, if you are out there and you're over the age of 10 and you don't know what a credit card breach looks like, and you haven't gotten a notice from somebody that your details were probably shared in a breach, like, I don't know what rock you crawled out from, but it happens to everybody, right? I used a card 2 weeks ago that I used it for the first time in over a year. I used it at a restaurant. I got a call like a half hour later saying, hey, your card's been compromised. They wouldn't tell me who it was. They wouldn't tell me where it came from, right? I know it's that restaurant, right? Somewhere in that chain. Right. And I can make the decision not to do business with that restaurant anymore. But we can't do that with credit cards in general, because they won't tell you where the chain came from. And the same thing in cyber. They won't tell you, like, we don't have enough transparency to say, yes, this is the cause of it. Here's the complete record of what happened. So then we can all make the decision as informed consumers, whether it's enterprise level or small business, to say, like, unless you improve your process, we're not going to do business with you, and prove to us that you're changing your process.
But you need that data. And
you do.
I often compare cybersecurity and the challenges that we have with due diligence to the health industry.
Yep.
And a couple years back, the New York Attorney General went into some nutritional supplement stores, and they bought a bunch of stuff, and they did lab tests on them. And, that $20 bottle of whatever, in one case was just ground up freeze-dried broccoli, right, in capsules, right? Like not even a shred of what was on the label of that bottle, just straight up
At least
fraud.
the bottle of Super Beets tells you it's just Super Beets.
Yeah.
Right. It's just beets. It's just dried beets ground up into super dark red powder.
You'll pay $80
They
for
found
it.
a lot more wild stuff that really should have been in those bottles, potentially harmful stuff as well, because it's just not, just like in cybersecurity, they're not required to do any kind of lab testing.
So
They're
are you
not
advocating for more regulation or legislation on this, or what's the?
I think it would require. So we almost got it with the SEC rule, but in the you have to share that you had a breach within 4 days if you after you determine it's material. In the 11th hour, they pulled out the bit that said you have to provide some details on how that breach occurred. So yeah, I do think it's going to have to be regulated. Like, just because so many companies are getting breached, I do get enough details to go through. Sometimes there's a lawsuit and a mandated report comes out. Sometimes, like in the case of Power School, Canada, 2 Canadian provinces did a deep investigation into it and were allowed to investigate those companies directly. So they were able to go in there into those companies, ask some questions, get some answers about that stuff. So here and there, we get enough details to know that we need more details.
Yeah.
It's sorry, I know we've been on this one a long time, but this is a really good conversation. Do you think the human nature of it, if we had that transparency, would it change the outcome? And I ask because, like, I just see people signing away their privacy, not caring about the credit card breach. Like, and on the corporate side, like, let's say you knew, pick any large company, right? I'm not going to call out a name. Like, it doesn't really matter, right, who it is. If they're offering the service, like, people trade their stuff every day for Facebook and LinkedIn and everything else, right? Would we stop doing business because they offer a cheap service that we just want the service?
There's only one way to do this, and we have precedent for this. It's called Sarbanes-Oxley. Unless you're getting the executives to sign off on this, it's going to be very difficult to get to that level, Ben, right? And if I think about what the SEC rule was going to potentially do, was to give us kind of a Sarbanes-Oxley light for cybersecurity. The legislation we need is an equivalence to Sarbanes-Oxley on the from the financial reporting side, on the cybersecurity reporting side. That would be the Nirvana use case, because now not only the CISO, but the CEO has to sign off. Now you got some real skin in the game, like you do with Sarbanes-Oxley. And until we get to that level, I'm not sure we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, credit cards it's a tough comparison because credit cards are disposable. Like your liability is limited by law as a consumer, and we know how to replace them. Like we've been to hell and back in terms of having to replace credit cards, because that's what cybercrime was 15 years ago. It was stealing payment data.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
But it's different once you get to the company level.
Exactly. And the only way you get company buy-in is similar to Sarbanes-Oxley on the cyber side.
Yeah, you can't get the bank to send you a new network. You can get them
you
to
need
send
teeth
you
though, right? Like,
but you need teeth, right? To your point, Ben.
My equivalence there is like, yeah, you can get it replaced, but like, there's nothing you can do to force them to do anything, right? And it's the same kind of thing. Like, we need a way to force companies to want to take action here, and I don't know that they do, right? Because again, people just keep going back to companies that have been breached. We keep going back to them.
Yeah. I
don't think it changes the outcome. The reason I want it is because I think it changes what we do as cybersecurity professionals. It changes strategy. Yeah. Helps us focus on things that might actually move the needle.
Exactly. What was the root cause? What are the things we should actually be spending money on instead of just chasing the shiny object all the time?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about learning from mistakes and good enough, Salesforce pulls back from LLMs, pivots agent force to deterministic automation after laying off over 4,000 people. Okay, we've been talking about AI for a long time. This is a super interesting story to me because reliability is an issue with LLMs. It has been. LLMs are really good at certain things, right? It's really good at content, understanding content, producing content, image recognition, etc. But when you're trying to build a deterministic model, it really kind of suffers. And here's Salesforce talking about they're pulling back from LLMs. This is huge news, in my opinion, for all these people that are just pouring money into these LLM AI strategies.
Yeah. But so I think people are pouring money into the AI strategies, not realizing that they're just pouring money into LLMs. Right, because I don't think people go deeper than that and understand the difference in general.
That may be true, Ben. I mean, we're dealing with all kinds of artificial intelligence models in my day job, right? And we use LLMs for certain things, but then we use embeddings for other things. And there's so many different models, right? But there's been this big push around the large language models and how they're going to solve everything. and they're not, right? And we learned
Nope.
this really early on when we tried to build, some of the early chatbot capabilities off of an LLM. Like it was so hard.
Well,
Like it
I
wasn't the
don't
right
think
use
people
case.
understand they're probabilistic.
Yeah.
So by
Yeah.
definition, they're going to be wrong sometimes.
Right. I know.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise, but I think the thing that really kills here is AI does a damn good demo, right? But the moment you try and scale it up to business scale, like at the personal level, I don't care if it's wrong 30% of the time. It's pretty quick and easy for me to throw away that 30% and give it a better prompt and move on. But it does require this kind of back and forth to deal with those errors. And you can't do that once you start automating with it. You can't
do it in
afford to.
production, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
It
tough.
has to be some kind of output. Like, if I need an image for a blog post, that's not a deterministic output. Like there's a lot of stuff you could give me that's going to be good enough.
Good enough.
But
Yeah.
if I'm doing calculations, if I'm doing,
should I make this trade?
if this is something that has to pass legal scrutiny, there's just too many cases where it's just the wrong technology for it. Like, yes, it's amazing. It spits things out that look very convincing and great. But we've seen it fall down in so many of these use cases. And Salesforce hit this really early. They've been playing with this technology really early. So I'm wondering if this is an early indicator of something we're going to start seeing from a lot more companies.
I mentioned this towards the year-end wrap-up. I was on an airplane a few weeks ago watching Squawk Box or Squawk on the Street, CNBC, on the plane. Jim Cramer comes on. He goes, these AI deals are the same deals we were making in the dot-com bust era. We were trading paper back and forth, making this look really, really positive, but all we were doing is swapping 10 billion one way to get 10 billion the other way. These deals were just crazy, right? And he's been saying this for a while. There is a bubble here, and this Salesforce article to me is so interesting on has certain companies realized that the LLM is not the end all be all technology that we're going to use in the AI world. And if that's the case, companies like OpenAI and all these others that have taken in tons of cash and burned tons of cash are potentially in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a little bit of swing on that. I've seen a couple other articles about not just this, but other issues in AI where they're taking different tacks and not allowing the AI to be as responsive, right? Putting more guardrails on it, right? Because they're starting to realize that there are problems in the results that it's returning, right? Could just be for ethical reasons, could be because, providing the wrong answer in some situations is actually critical and need more of a deterministic model. So I do think we're going to start to see this manifest where people are a little more critical of the models and what they're generating.
Yeah.
I think it goes a little bit deeper here too, in that I've observed most companies don't understand how work gets done in their organization.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you tasked me with automating Matt Alderman, I'd have to ask you thousands of questions before I put together any kind of even outline of the automation that I was going to build before I even wrote a line of code, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of overhead to go through your entire organization and try
the
and do
larger
something
the org,
like
the
that.
more difficult that becomes.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of complexity in an org like Salesforce.
Yeah. It's an interesting segue into this next article. The most dangerous leadership mistake isn't a wrong answer. It's a wrong question. Which LLM which AI should I use? LLM. No, should I even use AI is probably the better question, right? And so that's why I kind of line these up, because as we're talking through this, I'm like, yeah, maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Do we actually need AI? Do we know what it's going to solve for? Do we understand our processes and what we can automate? Then decide maybe what the right model is. If the answer is yeah, it might be a fit. So I thought this article was pretty interesting here in the middle.
Everybody loves the promise of a shortcut.
I think it's super important in the leadership side to figure out, like, what do you actually need to be thinking about, right? Like, what is the core question you're trying to answer? And I think we bring a lot of bias to that from a lot of different things, and that we have to really analyze the bias and figure out, what the core problem is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which ties into the next article, why you need to bring your extended leadership team into strategy decisions, because maybe you're not asking the right questions in your tight little knit group, and you actually need to expand that a little bit so somebody actually asks the right questions as you're developing these strategies.
And expose that extended leadership team to the perception that they have the ability to raise issues and concerns. Because when they don't feel like you want them to participate, you're just going to get the same thing you've always been getting. You're not going to get those really insightful pieces of the puzzle that you don't have.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, communication's really, really tough. I've seen so many organizations where, you get a ton of information you don't need. And what you actually need is kept secret, like within the organization. You have these cliques that kind of form within the organization, and, people end up competing with each other. Like there's famous examples like Apple, taking two product teams and putting them on different paths on purpose. But yeah, it's amazing to me how often defeat is snatched from the jaws of victory because people are even unwilling to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. This next article I threw in here for anybody looking for updated reading list for 2026, 10 books every professional should read for leadership and work-life balance. I have not read any of these, by the way, because I went through the list, and most of the books I've read have been more on strategy and communication, some of the other things, but these are more work-life balance based books. And I realized, I'm like, nope, I'm not reading any of those. I'm actually reading this one. My wife got it for me for Christmas. Searching for and Maintaining Peace. Talks about creating peace of the heart and how that helps you in lots of different situations. So that's the one I'm currently reading. But yeah, I hadn't read any of these 10.
Atomic Habits is great, but that's it for me on this list.
Yeah, none of these were on my list, but yeah, I'll be looking into a couple of them.
Yeah. For all those, you can't go wrong with Atomic Habits.
Got it. Good. Yeah, we don't do resolutions on this show, but for people who had resolutions to read more, here's a potential book list for you. Next article, Building Cyber Talent Through Competition, Residency, and Real-World Immersion. This was an interesting article. It was an interview, actually, of Chrisma Jackson, Director of Cybersecurity and Mission Computing and CISO at Sandia National Labs. I put this in here because we talk a lot about employee development and how to develop employees, not necessarily retain employees and those sorts of things. And I thought this was a really interesting kind of interview article of some of the things she's done, some really good tips in here around hiring and some of the other kind of development areas.
Yeah, we hit on a little bit of one of these where she asked the bottleneck in cyber talent, and she talks about it as how it's, anyway, you read the article here, but I thought it was good. It hit a couple bullet points for me. Cyber roles being scarce, like what is cyber? How do you define cyber? I think we really pigeonholed that, and I think it's much more general. We were having a conversation in the last session about that. So, yeah, good article.
Yeah. And then go ahead, Adrian. Oh, my last one. Your brain decodes color 200 milliseconds before words. Are you sending the wrong signals? So again, communication and understanding communication, but this one brings in this concept of what they call it, color psychology. And there's some base assumptions we all make, like blue is always good, red is always bad, but it's actually not that true. And so this was really interesting. It talks about the different colors and kind of what those colors represent and when to use them and not use them in certain situations. So I thought this was really interesting, especially if you're out interviewing or if you're on a podcast and you're like, if people are seeing you, they're going to recognize color first. So they're going to see the color of your shirt or some other color patterns before they even hear the first word out of your mouth, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Wear blue. Blues.
It's sorry, I lost you a little bit there, Matt.
Oh, I said wear blue. It's the crowd pleaser.
Blue is my favorite color. And interesting story here. I remember, this is talking about what to wear and things like that. I guess it goes beyond that, but I had a VP once that didn't like us using red for critical on our reports. So he actually sent us, took micromanaging to a new level, sent us a hex code for a color of blue he called non-threatening blue that he wanted us to use instead of red for critical on our reports. And
Interesting.
I've never forgotten that.
Yeah, blue
Because
is
red is the
critical.
attention grabber. If you want to get people's attention, you turn it red, right?
Also, keep in mind that something like 9%, 10% of males are colorblind.
Yeah,
and,
red, green. Yeah, red, green,
and
actually.
Also, when it goes on their e-paper black and white tablet, when your graph goes on there, they can't understand your graph anymore because it's all black and white.
You say like red's the attention grabber, but I actually heard there was there's some fire engines that are painted in actually green and yellow, and I saw some research one time that actually said that they actually stand out more than red. Like it's actually not really an attention grabber; it's what we've perceive it now due to culture. But
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, which just calls out like our perception and our bias around something based upon what we know versus the actual way the mind is processing data. So
exactly. That's why this article is so interesting. So people, if you want to understand like what color should you be wearing in certain situations, it actually breaks down each color and like when you should and shouldn't wear it or use it. I thought it was really interesting. Just one of those really interesting communication things we don't think about is how we perceive color and how that can impact based on either what you're wearing or logos or text or other things that you're using in your presentations, for example, could have a big impact.
I really think it depends on the scenario. You have to take the scenario into account because like if you're, if you have to wear a suit to something, if it's business casual, something like that, and you decide to wear purple pants, right? Like it's almost any color other than, the standard colors that you would normally see. Like if you have any color car other than black, white, and silver, it stands out. Like it doesn't matter what the color is, just because 97% of all cars that get sold are some neutral color. So I think I used to work with a guy who built a cloud pricing model, and he was very into the cloud. Worked with them at 451 Research, and because he worked with the cloud, he had this cloud suit, like jacket and pants were blue with white clouds on them. And so in some cases, it doesn't really matter what the color is. It's just, if it's significantly different from what everybody else is using or wearing or whatever if it's a PowerPoint or what you're wearing, I think it ends up being an attention grabber.
Yeah, very interesting. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.